what's up? Sora 2 came out recently, and I just got access yesterday, so I started playing around with the tool. I think it's a pretty cool tool. I think it's a pretty awesome tool. Um, that being said, I think what was interesting for me was not even like the video quality, because that was pretty standard for the current state of the art. What I thought was interesting was really that social media aspect that they tried to replicate with having a lot of users and having them generate their own AI generated content. Seeing those, like, it kept that thing where you could scroll for a while, right? Even though for me personally, you could only get like maybe 15 minutes. I think right now a lot of the engagements from the novelty of the application, right? Not really like the videos themselves, but I thought it was really cool. I got to play around with some videos myself. The first ones I usually do for video generation tools is animation, specifically anime, because I found those ones are the hardest to make. Usually, if you give it some like photorealistic thing, like a bear in the forest, it does pretty well. So that's why I really try and like steer into the animation side, because a lot of animation I think doesn't follow typical physics. Like there's a lot of other stuff that go into it. They have to kind of get you, there's a lot of factors that make it seem real, I guess, which is weird for animation, which isn't real, I guess. But I played around with animation. They actually did pretty well. I was really impressed with that, especially compared to VO3. The one I did right off the bat was an anime fight scene in Nigeria. What I thought was really interesting was obviously it had the stereotypical thing of, if it's an African country, it doesn't like a village and all that. But what I thought was interesting was the clothes, because they had like a dashiki and all that. But also more importantly was the voices, because I was thinking, oh, we'll probably have like some like white American 30-year-old voice, but have like an African accent. I thought that was really cool. I thought I had a lot of applications there. I guess culturally. Let me see. But that being said though, despite how cool and awesome this thing is, there was another aspect which was like the faces. I forgot what this specific part of the application is called, but basically you can upload your face and make videos off of it. You can also use other people who have given consent for their face to be used. And I'm also suspecting that if you're nefarious enough, you can use other people's faces who haven't fully consented. That being said, uh and that kind of leads me to my next point. That being said, despite all the coolness, awesomeness, and other words that probably don't exist, I think this tool obviously has a lot of dangerous applications. Like I remember the fourth or fifth video I saw was a Kobe Bryant video, and obviously Kobe Bryant is sadly not with us anymore, right? But then in my head, I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird because that's a dead person, right? And they're making videos of him doing things obviously he didn't do, right? And it's obviously not with the family's consent, because this is like Mark Grayson 123 that's posting this. I don't think the Bryants are related to Mark Grayson somewhere. So I think that's really where a lot of the negative feedback for this app comes. Is really the generation of people who shouldn't be generated, or just fake news in general. I think that's where I struggle. 'Cause I don't even know what to say when it comes to this portion of the video, because I definitely think this is a cool thing. I'm not gonna lie and say, oh, I think this is kind of lame, blah blah blah. I think it's definitely a really cool tool. I got excited when I even got access to it, right? But then despite that, there's obviously such a danger in using a tool like this, because there's a lot of bad actors, and it's not a matter of saying you can't let the bad actors destroy the application of a tool. Because the way I see it, there's obviously tools out there in the world that you just don't want bad actors to, and it's a fair argument to say no one should have access to this tool because of bad actors, right? I can think of like with AI video generation. I can't necessarily say that if AI video generation tools did not exist, right, that my life will be significantly worse off. But I could make the case in some future that if they continue to exist and get better, my life could be worse off. I pray not. I don't think that's the case, right? I don't think that's the case for reasons I'll get into later. So that's why like I struggle when I think of tools like this. I think that's why I sympathize with a lot of people when they complain. I remember before I even made this video, I was trying to get a lot of understand a lot of the feedback from people. I think just because I like engaging with opinions that are opposite of mine, I think a lot of the feedback I've seen so far has been negative. Obviously, if you go to certain places like Singularity Reddit, I think that's like the worst place on earth. But if you go there, you can obviously see people maybe being excited about this. And I think I understand why they're so upset. Um, and it's unfortunate. So obviously unfortunate. Obviously, OpenAI, I'm gonna be honest, in my opinion, I can't confirm it. I think everyone slightly agrees with this, but I think obviously they loosened the copyright restrictions, and they made sure that people knew that you could possibly do this with their tool, because it makes the tool much more valuable to everyone involved. Everyone obviously has their own use cases, their own applications for something like this, especially seeing the possibilities. It gets everyone excited or scared, and both of those are good for business, right? If people are scared, it makes the tool seem much more capable. If people are excited, tool is much more capable, stuff like that. Um, but I think when I think about this, right? When I think about the dangers of this tool, I think one of the things that come into my mind the most is really that like thing you learned in school, which is primary and secondary sources, or how to assess information. And what I'm talking about is like, okay, with primary sources, like those are people who were there at the event. Like those are people who can say this did happen. Secondary sources are people who kind of got that information from primary sources. And also with assessing information, you can look, okay, who posted this video. So for example, let's say I'm scrolling on Instagram, I see Mark Grayson 123 posted a video of Obama jumping off a plane. In my head, it's going to be a bit weird that Mark Grayson 123 is the first person to access this information, right? Because I don't think Mark Grayson will be on the plane with Obama as he was doing this. And also the angles are a bit off, right? I think it's something that a lot of people have brought up with like security and stuff like that. But sometimes you can tell like, was there a security camera right over there, right? Like you can tell where the security cameras are. You can try to align and see, okay, will the security camera even be able to get a video like this from a certain angle? And obviously if you're a bad actor who really does care enough, then I guess you'd be willing to make some adjustments to the video. But that being said, hmm, there's obviously layers of evaluation they can put a lot of videos through to make sure they're actually real videos and actually something you should actually take the information, right? And I think when I say that, the first thing that comes to mind to myself, I'm sure to other people, is like, okay, if I'm scrolling social media, I'm not going to do this for every video. I don't think you necessarily have to, but I also think there's videos where you definitely care about the information. Like with Obama, that's something like you're like, is that true, right? But if it's something like, oh, SpongeBob got shot in Montgomery Park, right? That's obviously something I don't care about because SpongeBob is a real character. So that's not something I care if it's real or not. I can obviously like make a better analogy, but that's the point that you don't have to do for every video, but for every critical video, which is like in the social media scrolling session, I think that's like maybe 5 that really matter. Maybe it's more, but I think the idea still stands. I think that's what gives me hope for tools like this, is that it's not necessarily the even though they advance, if people actually do work to build those skills, and if we do invest in education more, then maybe it's like it kind of balances out. Um, Especially since I don't think these skills are coming to importance, and I think these skills have always been important. Like I remember, a couple months back, I was scrolling Instagram, and I think I saw this cop treat this black guy unfairly, which is sadly something that happens a lot. Right then, a month later, I found it wasn't a real video, and it wasn't an AI video either. It was people dressed up and reenacted this video for some reason. And now I think about it, it's a bit funny because like they actually dressed up as their individual characters and everything. But what that taught me was, okay, I can't just trust videos like that. So now when I think about it, when I think about who posted the video, it was a bit weird because it wasn't like any news source. It was just a random guy with a couple followers and a couple of videos on this thing. I was like, okay, what ties? And the videos that guy had posted were actually similar to stuff like this. Right? It was a similar setting, similar characters. Now I think about it. So it's like now I have a way to actually evaluate information. I think it's not just a matter of AI videos or not. It's just a matter of truth and not truth, right? And I think that's something I really hope that people take more into account, especially as tools like this continue to get better. Another thing I also think about is that even if OpenAI, and I think they're doing this now because they've enforced restrictions with the Martin Luther King Jr. Videos, because people are making videos of him doing stuff that wasn't, it was like people was making videos without his consent. His family and the foundation that I think represents him said, you know what I'm saying? So then they stopped doing that. But even if OpenAI employs restrictions in that regard, with these tools, in my experience, there's never been a case where the company is like 10 years ahead and all the other companies are like 10 years behind. Right? A lot of times it's like if OpenAI has this thing going on, another tools or another like open source tools a couple months behind, and soon you're gonna have open source tools with less restrictions that bad actors can flee to make the videos they want, whether it be of MLK or some other person who did not give their consent. And I think that's why skills like that, despite wherever regulation OpenAI has, is so important. um but yeah, I think it's interesting. I think it's sad, but it's also exciting at the same time. And I think it's weird because I was just to spend like 5 minutes talking about like the dangers of the tool, but then it's like I can't. No matter what I think is, or no matter like the dangers, I still see that excitement and like accessing a tool like this. I think the biggest application that gets me excited is kind of like the education side of things. I'm not a teacher myself. I'm not a certified teacher. I don't teach in high school or wherever. But when I lead workshops or I'm leading a program or teaching wherever, um, one of the biggest things I've always struggled with is I'm doing a presentation. And oftentimes I like to use a lot of visual analogies to explain whether it's an algorithm or a process. And I think I'd really love if there was a tool that could generate a GIF or a GIF explaining the algorithm or process. Because I think a lot of people are visual learners. So it'd be a really great way to actually kind of have that and be something that could work on the fly. Even though I know there's obviously human people that can do that. I think a lot of what people who present the idea forget is that when it comes to individuals, especially like myself, all the times you're doing these presentations and it's like the day before, right? And it's not a matter of like, okay, am I going to use an AI tool or am I going to use a human person? Because a human person is going to cost like $10. So in my head, it's either I use the AI tool, I just don't use it at all. It's not a matter of like either or. I think that's like the unfortunate reality. I think businesses are different because businesses often can't afford to go use those tools. Um, well, there personally, I think a lot of people want to be cheap, and the probably is going to say, "Oh, AI can do." I've heard it's crazy. I've heard of people say AI can do this, AI can do that, and sometimes it's in places or applications where it's probably not best to use an AI for obvious reasons. But I think that's just the nature of people in general. Let me see how much time do I have left here. I think it's nice. I think it's going to be something I'm always willing to watch. I personally don't use these applications after like a month or two when they come up because, to be honest, it's not that many applications unless I'm doing a teaching something. And so far, in terms of the gifs and gifs of explaining processes, they haven't been that good. Maybe my prompts aren't just that good. Right? Maybe it's a matter of my prompts or my inputs. But right now, I don't think that they're at level. And maybe when they get there, I'll be using the tools more commonly. But I think right now I'm just gonna use it for like a month or two and it's gonna wear off. Same thing that happened with VO3, where I think they called it flow for a while. Uh, I think that's going to be actually I'm interested here because I think it's a different situation because with VO3 it's just a matter of like okay you put inputs and get an output, but with Sora it's actual like social media itself. Like I think they did a pretty good job, not amazing, but they did a pretty good job. Mimicking that social media vibe. I think that's the biggest thing with Sora because it's not even a matter of like oh this the video quality is so much better than everything else out there. It's really just that social media thing where you can go to an app and see other AI generated content. I think there's other stuff that go into like, do people actually, besides the novelty of AI generated content, do people actually want to go there and look at AI generated content? I think right now, for me personally, what motivates me is the novelty. But I will be lying if I say I don't laugh at certain videos. So if certain videos like, oh dang, that's a really cool application. I think that's something I'm really interested to see how that plays out in the next couple of months and how people actually use the app. Um, but yeah, it's exciting. It's definitely exciting. I also want to talk about animation, but I think animation is like really, gosh, like animation deserves a whole video. But I think I'll try and keep my opinion on the animation thing really short, real quick. I think a lot of times when people talk about AI videos and animation in the same breath, it seems to be a matter of like, okay, is this going to replace animation, right? Like human animation. I've always thought for a while now that that's kind of like the wrong conversation to have because it's so different in the process itself, right? Like with a human animation, let's just use a simple ball jumping from this corner to this corner, right? That's like a frame by frame animation. Like you draw the ball, you have to think about, okay, I want to get illustrate the idea of movement. So obviously I'm gonna like show the ball stretching or wherever, and then when it hits this corner, I'm going to show it squashing. Because that's like how real physical person I might like um I might stress that a bit to make it more interesting and engaging. That's a frame by frame process where you have a lot of modular control. Whereas with an AI video generation, that modular control is lost. This is really a matter of like a full diffusion of like a full video at once, right? So if I wanted a video of me talking here, it's not a matter of, okay, I say, hey, I'm gonna make this shirt wrinkled over here. I'm gonna make sure he touches his face at 2 seconds in the video and all that. That's a full thing that you generate. I think the process is so different that it's not really it's not really a matter of comparing the quality of the two things. I just think it's a different application of when you're using them. Um, but then obviously I always like to try like contrast what I say like or give an opposing view. But obviously in spite of that, I think people are obviously still going to try and use it to replace certain things. Like if you took the best AI video generation tool out there right now, I don't think it would serve the best animation director, right? Because with an animation director, there's so much things. Like if you watch these guys, when they break down their episodes, there's so many things that go into the episode, and so many tiny details. One is like the impact frames and the tiny jokes they make or stuff like that. There's so many modular things within that episode or video or frames that the AI thing just can't do right now. So what I think is actually going to happen is that when AI and animation really fully intersect to their full potential is when it's less about generating a whole video and doing more specific components, right? And maybe it's going to be a separate technology or separate tech stack entirely. But I think that's why I've never, like, even when I see it get better, like I've seen the videos on Sora, I've seen the videos I'm able to make. I never really said, like, okay, animation is dead. If like I think that's just I think people are being dramatic there. But I do get excited at the future where that modular control can come. 'Cause I think that's where animation becomes much more. It's going to change the way people animate. It's not going to be a matter for an artist no longer draws or whatever, but it's going to be a matter for an artist can get from point A to point B faster, right? And not just like in the full episode, but in terms of their cycles. Because if you're animating a thing, it's not just a matter of like, okay, I only have one idea. I just do like from this ball to the corner. I just sketch everything out. You obviously change stuff throughout the process. And the same where I think AI kind of the same way AI takes that when you're coding, that coding process, and it allows you to go through your cycles much faster of having an idea, running through it, I'm testing the idea, brainstorming all of that. I think that's what's going to happen to animation. It just hasn't gone there yet because the modular control isn't there, and I don't think people are building for it. Maybe Pixar and Pixar and Disney are definitely doing something behind the doors, even though they're fighting the copyrights and all that. So it's gonna be interesting to see how it plays out. Besides that, though, I have nothing else to say. So have a great day.